You're watching Inside Automotive with Cheyenne Malone.
Hi everyone, I'm Cheyenne Malone. It's no secret that diversity, equity, and inclusion, also referred to as DEI, has been a challenge within retail automotive and the industry as a whole. But acknowledging and addressing these challenges up front, head on, it's crucial. Today we're learning what dealers need to know as we go through the new year. Joining us now, we have Cheryl Thompson, the founder and CEO of the Center for Automotive Diversity, Inclusion, and Advancement. Welcome, Cheryl. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, there's a lot of things we can talk about, right? Different perspectives, but you actually conducted a study and you had some key findings. First, walk us through that study and tell us what jumps out to you most.
Yes. We have been trying to do this industry study for the last 3 or 4 years because although we can look around and kind of see what representation looks like, we really wanted to dig into the granularity of that data. Where are we in terms of diversity in job functions, leadership levels? We kind of know that the leadership pipeline looks like a triangle. We've got plenty of diversity at the entry level, but the higher up you go, the less and less we see. And I think that really requires us to take a look at career paths and job functions. And then the other thing that we always hear is, well, women and minorities, they just don't go into these technical fields. And so we really wanted to dig into that as well. So that's why we did the study. So I'm really pleased over the last year we've been able to do this study, and we looked at about 40 companies across automotive, mobility, retail dealerships. And we had a portion of those companies share their demographic data with us. And then we used publicly available information to kind of complete that look. And I'm optimistic from what I saw. So what I'm seeing is women's representation, it's staying about 24 to 26% when I look at automotive as a whole and when I look at retail specifically. But what I think is really interesting is representation of the leadership roles is on par with that of the industry workforce. So what that's telling me is where I used to see fewer women at the top, that pyramid effect,
Sure.
I'm starting to see that smooth out now. So that tells me we're making some progress. However, on the ethnic and racial minorities, I'm seeing consistent representation at the entry level, but we're seeing a bigger gap in terms of leadership. So what that tells me is the great work that we've been doing for women, because there's been a ton of focus on women in automotive, we need to apply some of those lessons learned to racial and ethnic minorities.
What else stands out to you when you look at the study and the results?
The other thing that stands out is attrition. We see higher attrition. It's very high for Black or African American workers, and that is both across all of automotive and within the dealer world. And then I would say there's higher representation of Hispanic and Latino workers in retail when I look compared to just manufacturing. And that could be because there's a lot of dealerships with locations in Florida, Texas, and California. And when you look across manufacturing, that's more of the Midwest. That's the other thing I see. Across the dealerships, I would say there's consistent, steady progress being made. Some companies that have shared their data publicly have been tracking this since back to 2018, and they're continuing to make that steady progress on both females in leadership, in board positions, and across the workforce. And it's just really, really promising to see.
So
the other thing go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing is we're seeing structure being put into place, which is really, really important. Having workers or staff dedicated to driving these programs for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So when you talk about that, you have, more minorities at the lower level, right? You're still seeing that triangle. It's gotten better with women. How do you change that? Is it applying the same technique and strategies that you did to get women at the top increasingly, or is it different?
I think it's a little bit of a mix. So I think we need to look at changing the status quo. What has worked for us in the past isn't going to necessarily work for us in the future. So I think we need to look at the entire employee life cycle. Sometimes companies get too focused on recruiting. I think there's such value in retention and developing your talent internally. So really looking at career paths. There's some really good companies within the retail space that are focusing on career path. What, as a technician, what is my next step? How do I get to that next level? If I'm a service advisor, how do I get to that next level? How do I get to that general manager space? So really making sure there's clear career paths in place and that there's equal opportunity for everyone to participate. And then we really need some good leaders who act as allies, advocates, and sponsors to help pull people up. Just an example, I was in a non-leadership position, back years ago, and it really took an ally, a mentor, to say, hey, I think you're ready for more. And when I said, oh, I don't think I'm ready, he really pushed and challenged me and kind of brought me along. So we need those people who are going to mentor, sponsor, maybe even provide a leadership development program or a coaching program for those who are needing maybe a little bit more development. Because, when we think about support in the workplace, these mentoring relationships happen in an organic way, right? I can think of some of the mentors I've had over my career, and they saw something in me. Maybe I reminded them of their daughter. And we really need to make sure everyone has access to mentors, sponsors, right, which are a little bit different than mentors. Mm-hmm. Mentors are someone that's kind of giving you their advice based on their experience, but a sponsor is someone who's really putting their political or social capital on the line for you, and they're advocating for you. They're talking about you in rooms that you're not yet in and help pulling you along, letting people see who are you, giving you that exposure and visibility that's just so crucial to advancing within the workplace.
Great distinction there between the two. You also talked about turnover rates, right, are higher with some of the diverse candidates.
Yes.
What do we do to change that? Are there any best practices that you recommend?
Well, that definitely is a tough one. I think that we need to have more conversations. We need to have more focus groups. These exit interviews are great, but we know that exit interviews, very little information is shared because we're afraid of burning bridges. Mm-hmm. So one thing that's been really cool is stay interviews, talking to people and finding out what they love about their job, what would make them leave. That gives some insights. So I think that's a positive thing, holding stay interviews. But I think another effective tool is having executive listening sessions, getting the senior leadership team in front of people who are underrepresented to find out what are the specific barriers, obstacles, and challenges. Because some of these things could be systemic. It could be pay structure. It could be hours. It could be flexibility, right? And really understanding what's getting in the way, and then, coming back and taking an organizational view, what changes can we make to make things a little bit more equitable for everyone? Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like there's a lot of lip service when it comes to DEI, or do you think a lot of times dealers and owners and entrepreneurs are trying to work towards making some actionable plans?
Oh, gosh, Cheyenne, this is the $1 million question, isn't it? I think there is a lot of lip service in some cases, but companies that have been at this for a while, I think that they realize people can see through that. And I have seen, we know there's all kinds of resistance and pushback on DEI, right? It's a very hot topic. It's very politicized. And so people, I think, are being a little bit more careful, and they're being more intentional. So instead of having a lot of activity going on, they're really focused on outcomes. What are the outcomes that we want to see? And how do we make sure that we're taking the right actions and being a little bit more strategic and intentional? And I think some companies, once they've started a DEI program, if they know that if they just kill it and stop it, it's probably going to be doing more damage than if they would have done nothing at all, right? Mm-hmm. So I think companies are waking up a little bit to this lip service. They don't want to be classified as a company that's only checking the box, so to speak.
Any final thoughts before we wrap here, Cheryl?
Final thoughts. What we'd love to get people interested in the study. The full report comes out at the end of this month. We did a little sneak peek at the end of last year. So if anyone's interested in that, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to have you. And we have our 12-week certification program coming up in February, which we've put 5 cohorts through. And it is a wonderful way to learn how to lead DEI in a strategic way within your company. It's a 12-week certification program, and it's self-paced. We also have live sessions in addition to that, and the students complete a capstone team project, which has provided some phenomenal tools for the industry, which are available to anyone listening. They're all free. We've got about 20 of these packages done already.
All right, sounds like a great tool. Cheryl Thompson, the founder and CEO of the Center for Automotive Diversity, Inclusion, and Advancement. Thank you so much for your insight today, Cheryl. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Cheyenne Malone.